Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Bit of a late start this morning. Had a terrible problem with my back. I just could not get it off the bed. But we are going to have a look at the fuller story on the one I did a little flash video on yesterday evening. Jason Leitch and his dodgy pay deal. The way that they can hide how much this guy is earning. And they've been doing so for a long time now. You have to wonder why they are so shady about these things. How much are they paying him? Why are they doing it this way? And why have they promoted a failed dentist to be the most important person in Scottish medical history? It seems very weird. But we will have a look at it, see what's going on, and see why this guy seems to be mired in as much corruption and sleaze as everyone else within the SNP. Here goes. Right, I'm just going to say the very first two words of this headline, secretive SNP. How often do we see those two things together? It's all the time, isn't it? There's no other way. They're never open and honest, despite what they say. But anyway, get into it. Secretive SNP government urged to come clean over Jason Leitch's unorthodox pay deal. Come clean? My backside. They won't ever come clean. They don't like the truth. The National Clinical Director has worked for the Scottish Government since 2007, except, of course, he hasn't, as he is on secondment from NHS Tayside, and therefore his salary and financial interests are not disclosed. Shadiness, cover-up, what's he hiding? Way more than they ever want to come out, that's for sure. The Scottish Government has been told to release details of under fire National Clinical Director Jason Leitch's unorthodox contract arrangements, including his salary and financial interests. And I think that the get around they're using here is because he isn't part of the government, it doesn't need to be declared. But I would suggest that anyone employed in a position by the government, even if it's not directly, paid from government funds, but paid, like in this case, from NHS, a separate budget, should be deemed to be working for the government, and therefore that position must be made clear. Or the government, when they employ people like this, must employ them. And that way there's no sort of two-facedness. There's no allegations of sleaze, no allegations of corruption. It will be clear and open and honest. The sort of three words there that the SNP recoil at like vampires from sunlight, isn't it? Anyway, he became the face of the COVID pandemic in Scotland alongside Nicola Sturgeon, appearing regularly on the First Minister's boring daily televised briefings, The Nicola Sturgeon Show, Hey Everybody Look at Me, and the BBC Radio Football Show On the Ball. He appeared on that as well, presumably talking about his expert subject, failing dental exams. However, calls are growing for him to resign or to be sacked after the UK COVID inquiry revealed damning evidence about his flippant attitude to record keeping and his disparaging comments about opposition MSPs. And we've done the story about that, the way, well, I'm not going to go into all the things he said, but he was, really just ripping these people apart, showing his inner nastiness, his hatred for all things that weren't SNP. And yet he's employed by the NHS, who are supposed to treat all equally. They always go about being diverse and equality and equity, and nobody is different or better or worse. And then he sits there and all this bigotry comes out of him. Now, given his obvious bigotry, he's unfit to work for the NHS. If you in the NHS had made disparaging comments about the colour of someone's skin, their sexuality, their gender, their sex, whatever, you would be fired under the NHS equality rules. And why is political opinion any different? If he is so loathing of people who are not nationalists, not SNP supporters, then that is a bigotry and a hatred, and that should disbar him for working for the NHS as well. So fire him from the NHS, fire him from government, and let him go out into the wide world and do what he does best, making a dick of himself. Anyway, it can be revealed now that despite working for the Scottish Government since 2007, he is not a government employee. Instead, he remains on secondment from the NHS Tayside, meaning his salary and financial interests are not disclosed alongside other senior civil servants. And giving evidence to the inquiry's hearing at Edinburgh International Conference Centre on Tuesday, he made no reference to these unusual arrangements when it was put to him that he had a unique role. His role was one of cover-up, wasn't it? He does not like the truth coming out. Professor Leitch, well, I don't know why they're calling him professor. He's not a professor. He's been given an honorary professorship, but that's not a real professorship. Jeremy Clarkson's been given an honorary doctorate, but we don't call him Dr. Clarkson, do we? Anyway, Leitch, we'll call him now. The Leitch replied, I think the title is unique, but the role isn't quite so unique. The closest English comparison, he says, probably the medical director of the NHS England. But it's not a direct comparison because I work for the government. He's admitted it himself. He works for the government. Release all his information. He's happy to admit he works for the government. Treat him as a government employee. He says, we don't have a separate NHS structure like they would have in England. That doesn't matter. Stop comparing apples and bananas. They're not the same things. In fact, campaigners have been trying to discover more about the medic's contract for a number of years, with numerous Freedom of Information requests submitted to the Scottish Government. Asked for details of his remuneration, officials said in November 23, the National Clinical Director is employed on standard NHS consultant terms and conditions by NHS Tayside and works for the Scottish Government under a service level agreement. So NHS are paying him, but he's doing all this work for the government, so he's not working for the NHS. So I do hope the NHS are cutting his pay for all the time he's not working for them. And then when he is working for the government should be paying him, and therefore that figure should be released, surely. In October 2020, an attempt to discover his financial interests received the following response. Leitch is not a Scottish Government employee and not required to register his personal financial interests with the Scottish Government, although he may choose to do so. If he's not an employee, why is he given such an important role? Make him an employee or fire him off. Scottish Conservative Chairman Craig Hoy said Leitch's unusual employment arrangements will raise eyebrows among the public, and as a high-ranking SNP government advisor and one we know played a huge part in government decisions during the pandemic, it is vital that Leitch is subjected to the same transparency requirements as other civil servants, yet this unusual arrangement seems to allow him to dodge public scrutiny over his taxpayer-funded salary. Well, of course, he doesn't want anyone to know. He could be creaming an income from the government, creaming an income from the NHS, while not actually giving full-time work to the NHS, plus whatever sideline contracts he's arranging for himself by utilising the contacts he's made in government. You don't know these things. It's absolutely shady. We know it is. It's corrupt. It is a rotten corpse government. It is fungal-ridden. It is crawling, writhing with corruption. And they're covering this up because they know how bad it would look if the truth was revealed, put it that way. Leitch has told he was working as a dental surgeon in the west of Scotland in 2005 when he was offered the chance to attend the Institute of Healthcare Improvement in the USA. This is a non-profit private healthcare firm which now plays a huge role in NHS Scotland. Well, they may be non-profit, but that's non-profit after they've paid their staff. And you have to wonder how much the NHS is now paying this American company in order to pay its American staff. And Leitch. Again, cover-up, sleaze, corruption, no truth, nothing coming out. Nothing. The man is wrong one. The man is a fake. He's an absolute fake. He calls himself a professor. He isn't. He took 7 attempts to become a dentist, and he knows sod all about infectious diseases or epidemiology, and yet they made him the guy in charge. And when the real epidemiologist gave information, they ignored it. They did the reverse. They did not want to listen to him because what he was saying, this is Professor Woolhouse, a real professor, was saying did not go along the lines of what the SNP desired to happen. It all stinks. I'm coming up. So we want to know, how much is he being paid by the NHS? And is there a reduction for the time taken when he's working for government? Is he being paid for the government? And in both cases, how much is he being paid? We want to know his other outside interests. Is he earning money from this IHI, which is being paid by the NHS? And if so, how much? And is that done so that he can avoid sort of scrutiny again by being paid in an American company, and is it going to an American corporation, maybe held in Delaware, where taxes do not need to be declared? This is entirely possible. This is shady. This is absolutely shady stuff. And it needs to be opened up. The sunlight needs to be shone on it, and you need to see all those maggots and crawling things scutter and hide and get back under their rocks as we do let the light in. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button. Definitely. Please hit the like. Please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay angry. And I will speak to you later. Bye.